Yeah.
Well, that's fine. Hello, Twitch audience. Just if you want to get into the Vikings a little bit, I've got a little there, but certainly Wolves, Twins. I'll follow your lead. No problem.
Perfect. Look at that. All right, here we go.
Yeah, we stopped doing things that got us a lead, and that's been a theme in some of these losses. You know, I thought we played a solid 3 quarters, and then we stopped doing things, you know, that got us there, offensively and defensively.
Reckless speculation.
All right, as reckless speculation commences here, Darren Doogie Wolfson from 5 Eyewitness News and the Scoop Podcast, Apple, Spotify, SKORNorth.com, and the SKOR North app. And last night, Jugs, we'll get to all kinds of stuff. We'll get to some Viking stuff. Twins have been active since we last talked, but the Timberwolves, like the bar is literally an inch off the floor. Like, no one is asking for a championship. Nobody's asking for anything grandiose. We're just asking for something that looks watchable. And what they did in the fourth quarter yesterday against a depleted but very well-coached San Antonio Spurs team, I don't know if it was rock bottom, because I think rock bottom has probably happened a few times this year, but what did you make of that meltdown last night? And we'll ask the question for like the 4th straight week. What's the status of Ryan Saunders?
It continues the theme. By the way, we can also get to the Wild. They are actually undergoing COVID testing as we speak. So if you want to get into the Wild at some point, we can do that. But Phil, it continues a theme. They are atrocious in the fourth quarter. This is not rock bottom. In this very segment, just a couple weeks ago, it was a Wednesday night game where their win probability was like 99.9% in the final couple minutes, and they lost that game. Now, last night, up 16, 10 minutes to go, the win probability was slightly below 98%. So that was close to rock bottom. You're not supposed to lose a game when you're up 16 with 10 minutes to go, but they've actually done worse just this calendar year, let alone examples of the last year or two, the Sacramento game from last season, the Oklahoma City game from last season. I mean, it's one debacle after another. As far as Ryan Saunders goes, I get it. If, Phil, you want to call for his head right now, I'm not in a position to offer a whole lot of resistance. Judd, if you want to call for his head, Declan, go for it. I'm not in a position to say you're nuts. Like, go for it. If you want to, go for it. I'm not convinced, though, that hiring David Vanterpool or Prigioni or Gates as the interim coach is going to change a whole lot. But I completely get it, the idea that you bring in a new coach, that it wouldn't be fourth quarter debacle after fourth quarter debacle. I still want to see Ryan coach Cat with D'Lo, with Anthony Edwards for more than 5 games. Let's reach a conclusion after the season. I also think there's still a reasonable chance this calendar year, if not this calendar year, maybe a year from now, that Glenn Taylor has sold the team. Allow the new owner not only to make a call on Ryan Saunders' future, but make a call on Gerson Rosas' future, because you can make a case, if you're going to fire Ryan, you also fire Gerson Rosas.
Okay, Doogie, let's go back to the game last night, though. And you are a basketball a student of the game, a guy that loves the game and breaks it down. So explain this as far as Ryan goes, because this has nothing to do with the players. Explain the last possession and sequence. 2 timeouts left, I think 18 seconds left. Wolves have the ball. They don't use a timeout, so they actually have to bring the ball up the court. There's now 8 seconds left, and of course, pop fouls. Wolves get the ball, call a timeout, and set up what looks to me to be almost a hurried and poor shot by Russell when Beasley is having a fantastic game. I don't look at that. Now, I don't like the shot by D'Angelo, but I don't look at that as a player problem. I look at that as a guy who is not a student of the game of basketball. I look at that as an abuse of the game of basketball as far as what the coaching should be. So just like take me through what you think the thought process is there, because there does not seem to be, when it comes to coaching and players here, and I don't think this changes with Cat, there does not seem to be any stability here of somebody who could sort of put their thumb on things and say, okay, at least we're going to have a coherent plan of what we're going to do. And that to me is exhibit A, if I am going to fire Saunders as my case.
I understand that. I don't know if I would use the word abuse, Judd, But do I think it was a miscalculation to wait to call the timeout when he had multiple timeouts? Yes. I mean, you could have played a 2-for-1 type game, or, go for the 2, foul, and then get another possession, a 2 for possession. The shot they got off was atrocious. That was D'Lo for a good portion of the fourth quarter, right? It was him trying to play hero ball. You're right. Malik Beasley had his best game on the road. He's been their best player this year. You had to get him more touches there in the fourth quarter, more shooting opportunities. So I understand it was not a good coaching decision, but I still think that there is something to be said. People don't want to hear this, but there's something to be said about the youth. There's also something to be said about the youth on the bench. Like, I think about the Philadelphia staff. Dave Yeager is an assistant coach. Like, could you imagine if the Wolves had Dave Yeager on their staff? So I get it. People love Vanterpool because his name's been out there for head coaching jobs. The defense, by the way, has been better the last 2 weeks. I should mention that. They're like top 10 in defensive rating over the last couple weeks. The problem has been the offense. They are dead last in offense going back about 11, 12, 13 games offensive rating. So the offense is the problem, not necessarily the defense. But like last night, they had a bunch of really bad defensive possessions. They still give up way too many points in the paint. But I think youth overall, both on the court and on the bench, is certainly lending itself to some of these issues. But Judd, I completely get it. I'm telling you, if you right now want a monologue that Ryan Saunders needs to be fired, I get it. But it's a slippery slope. Like his mom has ownership in the team. Like it's such a weird situation. And I still don't think, like, they're the only NBA team that is more than 3 games out of a playoff spot. So as bad as Detroit is and Washington, and some of it's the Eastern Conference, but those teams are at least within 3 games of a playoff spot. The Timberwolves are literally the only team in the league not within 3 games of a playoff spot. So if you want to go on a monologue and say it's coaching, that they would have multiple more wins with a different coach, fine, so be it. But even so, with 2 more wins, guess what? They're still 15th in the Western Conference. They are still rock bottom, even with a different coach. That, to me, points to this roster still being incredibly broken, that they don't have a functional power forward. With Cat out, Naz Reid is good in some instances. He takes a lot of charges. Otherwise, I think he's a train wreck on defense, but he can do some things offensively. Like, you like Naz Reid, but I don't think you want Naz Reid playing 25, 30 minutes right now. So they really don't have a real functioning backup center. I think Naz Reid is more like a number 3 type center that you continue to develop. So the roster has so many holes on it. I just don't know how you dig out of it anytime soon. I'll go back to the question I asked you guys last week when I was in studio. The next time the Wolves make the playoffs, and yes, I do think it's when, not if, even if it's 5 years from now, 7 years from now, 10 years from now, when, not if, how many guys that are here now, coaches, front office executives, players, how many guys that are here right now will be here the next time they return to the postseason? I'll tell you my answer as you guys think about it. Maybe 1, maybe Anthony Edwards, maybe 2. I don't even know if I'd go to 2. Like, 1, I guess maybe Jaden McDaniels. He's been good. You're not moving him anytime soon. So maybe it's a couple players, but really, like, think about the turnover that is going to happen in the next few years.
Yeah. I can't remember if you floated this name or not, and maybe you did even today and I just missed it, but a name I think that would be interesting if they do move on from Ryan. So Kenny Atkinson was the coach of the Brooklyn Nets for 4 years, and he got the most out of D'Angelo Russell in a 1-year span. In fact, he basically took an anonymous group of Nets players, including like Spencer Dinwiddie and Karis LeVert and those guys. They won a playoff game. They went to the playoffs and finished above 500 a couple years ago. He's currently an assistant with the Clippers, I want to say. But that's the type, like, somebody who has done it before with sort of an anonymous roster and someone who has a connection to D'Angelo Russell. That's probably the type of guy I would look at if they moved on.
100%. He would be a name I'd look at too. That's another staff, by the way, the Clippers, right? With Ty Lue as the head coach. Chauncey Billups has been around for a while, doesn't have a lot of coaching experience, but he's on that bench. Kenny Atkinson, just Atkinson and Ty Lue. Like, think about the experience with those 2 guys, right? Pointing to the lack of experience on the Wolves bench, even though Brian Gates has been around forever. But I'm not necessarily counting Brian Gates as this excellent basketball mind that has, like, exudes all these leadership qualities. Nice guy, but I think he's in the position that he's destined to be in for a long time. But yeah, I remember that season. That was what, 2-3 years ago, Phil? That Brooklyn Nets team started 8-18. So through 26 games, they were a train wreck. They then went on an unbelievable run. Yes, it helped that they were playing in a very weak Eastern Conference. They actually ascended to the 6th seed. So they were the 6th seed. Correct me if I'm wrong. This is all top ahead, but I'm pretty positive they ascended to the 6th seed. I think they ended up finishing over 500. Were they 42-40 or 43-39? And you're right, a pretty nondescript roster. Joe Harris was on that team, and Joe Harris is now, what, a $100 million player. So there were some other good players. Like if you look at, I think basketball's got a wins above replacement metric if you go to Basketball Reference. I don't know if Russell was number 1 that particular year. He was up there. He was really good. But I still wonder if that was an outlier year, Phil. I have to wonder that. I don't know that D'Angelo Russell is a winning player. He can do some things. Don't get me wrong. I mean, if you look at his overall clutch numbers, his career clutch numbers are pretty good. Like he is in many ways an elite shot creator and shot maker. But in terms of making guys around him better when he decides to pass the ball, I actually think he's a pretty capable passer. But I don't think he's a winning player. He's a negative on defense. The body language, if you want to go down that road, I mean, it's always hard to, really quantify somebody's body language. But like last night in particular, now it doesn't help when you're missing shots, but his body language just looked piss poor last night. I just, put it this way, and I was on board with the trade. I mean, it was about 1 year ago today, right? Give or take a few days, but it was about 1 year ago today. The Wolves made the trade, bringing in Russell, sending out Wiggins, sending out the future first-round pick. That day, so if we go back a year, Phil, I said yes, I would have done that trade. I was wrong. If you could go back and reverse that trade, even with Andrew Wiggins' warts, if you could go back and reverse that trade just to get back the first-round pick, I think you would have to reverse that trade.
How did COVID spread through the Wild, and what's the status now? They've canceled, I believe, they've postponed, I should say, Dukes. The next 4 games, February 9th, which I think is next Wednesday, would be their first game back. What's the status of things, though? Because, I think Buffalo, the Devils, and this team have all shut down for a time period.
Yeah, and I think it's Vegas, and there's been some other teams, Dallas and Carolina, earlier in the year. So, the Wild are team number 6 that's had a COVID outbreak. How it started, Judd, I don't necessarily know. I mean, a couple Kings are now on the COVID list, right? And the Wild had those games against the Kings, and then Foligno tests positive, and then it goes from there with, Bonino and Eriksson Ek and Bukestad and Spurgeon and Marcus Johansson, who didn't travel to Denver, but Johansson is also on the COVID list. I'll tell you this much, though. So 1 week from today, they have a game against St. Louis. I was texting with an unnamed player on background. This player said he doesn't foresee how the heck they would play that game. So as of now, the NHL has said, okay, no game tonight, no games this weekend, no game next Tuesday against St. Louis. But as of now, the game 1 week from today, February 11th, is on. But this player said, I just don't know how we return to the practice ice for 1 day on February 10th and then would be expected to play a game February 11th. The facilities are shut down. So these guys are going to just be sitting around for the most part for the next week. So this player has all sorts of trepidation about being able to be in a position to play a game 1 week from today. They are currently undergoing, as we speak here, it's 10:35 Denver time, 11:35 Twin Cities time. They are undergoing testing right now to determine, okay, who can hop on the team charter, who needs to take a medical jet back to the Twin Cities if anybody else tests positive.
Crazy. Mm-hmm. All right, Duke. So Judd and I have kept a cool head about the Twins and have just preached patience to everybody. We never sounded an alarm at all at any point this offseason. And our patience has paid off. They've made a flurry of activity the last couple weeks. J-Hap, Nelson Cruz coming back, Alex Colomé as the closer. So is this it? Or how many other irons are in the fire right now from what you can tell?
Well, the 40-man roster will be full once they announce the Colomé and Cruz deals, but you can always create a spot or two. I mean, there's some relievers on the 40-man that I think you could get through waivers. So if they need to create a 40-man spot or even 2, I think it would be relatively
As
easy.
Patrick Royce says, just give me a pencil and an eraser, and I'll take care of it for you.
Yeah, now I would argue that this 40-man roster is deeper than a lot of teams' 40-man rosters. But yes, if you look at a couple of the arms, I mean, I'm telling you, if fans want to, just Google Twins 40-man roster, look at it. There will be some pitchers that you see on there that literally, unless you are the ultimate diehard, you've never heard of them. So those guys in all likelihood could get through waivers. So, like, can I see the Twins signing maybe one more free agent to a major league contract? I wouldn't necessarily rule that out. There are still so many relievers on the board, and they've had dialogue on a lot of these guys. Justin Wilson, Tyler Clippard. Heck, they've talked to Boris about Rosenthal. They've had conversations about Shane Green, some other guys. Put it this way, it's now February 4th, so a lot of these agents, if the Twins haven't called them, they are now calling the Twins saying, okay, looks like you guys could use another reliever. What about my guy? So there's a lot of conversations happening. So, like, can I see a scenario where they add another reliever? I can. Can I see a scenario where they add a starter? I can. I don't think at this point it's going to be Odorizzi or Paxton. I mean, unless Jim Pohlad says to Derek Falvey and Dave St. Peter, take the payroll higher, I don't foresee a scenario where they go big money. Like, those guys want more than Hap, right? Odorizzi, and probably rightfully so, right? Like, Odorizzi is probably an $11 or $12 million a year pitcher, right? Paxton is probably a $10, $11, $12 million a year pitcher. So I don't see the Twins going that route, but could I see them bringing in somebody on a minor league deal that competes with Randy Dobnak for that fifth spot? Yeah. Now, do I think it's Julio Teheran? I checked on him today. No, the Twins haven't been maintaining dialogue on him. Folty, the former Atlanta Brave, the Twins were at his showcase last week. But I was told again this morning that it's very unlikely that he lands with the Twins. I mean, there's been dialogue, but it looks like he's going to go elsewhere. But there's some other names out there. So I don't have a specific name, but the Twins signing some starter to compete with Dobnak, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me. I will say this much, though, on Dobnak, and I'll admit he's my guy. I had a lengthy conversation with him last Friday. I'll throw that on the podcast. Hopefully I can record a new podcast later today. Randy and I talked for 20, 25 minutes last Friday. Like, he couldn't stop gushing about the addition of Simmons. Like, you think about all the pitchers on the Twin staff that induce ground balls. Like, nobody induces more ground balls than Randy Dobnak. Like, Randy Dobnak is going to benefit as much as anybody from the addition of Simmons. So I think Randy Dobnak is a capable number 5 starter. You know, if his ERA is in the 3.9, 4 neighborhood, I think you can be okay with Randy Dobnak as your number 5 starter. But I can see them bringing in somebody, have that person compete with Randy in March. And if you need to add that guy to the 40-man roster on March 28th, ahead of April 1st opening day, then they can do that.
Hey, so with the Twins basically set now, where do we think that they stack up against Chicago as far as, because I think a month ago when the White Sox had signed Hendricks and made all of their moves, Dukes, that there was a prevailing theory, probably accurately, that the White Sox had passed the Twins as far as the favorites in the division. With the Twins now, with Cruz coming back and with the moves that they've made to bring in a couple of outside guys to help them, what's the prevailing theory about the American League Central and who the favorite is going to be going into spring training? Still Chicago?
Well, I think until you knock the champion off the pedestal, you know, maybe it's my Twin Cities bias if people want to suggest that, but you know, they are the 2-time defending champions. I don't think the roster has taken any sort of significant step backwards. So to me, until the Twins are knocked off the pedestal, you know, I'd make the Twins a betting favorite. Now, would I make them a heavy betting favorite? No, I think the White Sox have gotten better. Liam Hendricks is a really nice signing, right? The best reliever that was on the market, they got him. Lance Lynn is a really nice addition, although I do wonder at 34 years old in the shape he's in, if at some point he starts to wear down. Adam Eaton, probably an upgrade over Mazzara, right? They punted on Nomar Mazzara, you know, so the offense should be pretty good still, right? They still have all those pieces. They hired an old manager, but a capable manager, you know, certainly a manager that knows the game really well. I think it'll probably come down to, you know, who wants to make a tweak or two during the season, or maybe even more than a tweak. You know, like, do the Cubs trade Kyle Hendricks? Would the Twins get in on Kyle Hendricks middle of the season? Or do they revisit talks? They've talked to the Reds. Do they revisit talks in June or July on Castillo or Sonny Gray? Like, to me, there's another move. It might be a big move that's in season, not now. But to me, of those two teams, who's the next team that makes that big move, even if it's 4 or 5 months from now. I think that move could ultimately put that team over the top to win the Central Division.
Dukes, what else you got? Give us some rapid fire scoops here. Anything Vikings related?
Well, before we get to the Vikings, I do find it fascinating that the Twins made Marcell Ozuna a nice offer. I'll just tell you this much. I don't have all the particulars on the exact terms of that offer, but I can tell you the Nelson Cruz camp. By the way, Nelson Cruz helped recruit Colome. So after Cruz committed to signing with the Twins, he got on the phone. His cousin, who knows Colome, hopped on the phone. The Cruz folks, Nelly and his cousin, ended up talking to Colome and told Colome, hey, we're going back to Minnesota. You need to join us. So
That's cool.
Credit to Nelly for helping recruit Colome. Certainly the money helped as much as anything. The Twins are willing to pay him a decent amount of money, but Nelly helped recruit Colome. But yeah, I mean, on Ozuna, like the Cruz camp is convinced it was more than 1 year. Like the Twins look like they're only signing guys to 1-year deals. The Cruz camp believes strongly that the offer to Ozuna was more than 1 year, and it was more than what they signed for. So Nelly gets $13 million plus. He's got some relatively easy, reachable incentives where he can make an extra couple $100,000. But for the most part, it's a $13 million deal that they were offering Ozuna more money than that. You know, so that to me is interesting. It falls in line with the Twins making Kirby Yates an offer, you know, making Corey Kluber an offer, making Charlie Morton an offer. Like they've made a lot of free agents offers, and those guys have said no. John Brebbia, another. I mean, they've made guys offers that have said no. So just for me, that's always fascinating to hear the backstory on that. Like who are the guys that you made nice recruiting pitches to that ultimately just didn't choose you? You know, but I think the Ozuna one is really interesting. And you could have made a case at 30 years old that he would have been a better fit on the field. But I do think there's something to be said off the field. You know, Nelly's influence specifically on Sano, but all the Latin American players, you know, so Arise, Polanco, you know, even some of the guys in the bullpen, the Kalinas of the world, right? I think Nelly, you know, he's got those guys in his back pocket. Like they respect Nelly to the nth degree, right? And I'm not quite sure Marcell Ozuna has those leadership skills, but on the field, like 30-year-old Marcell Ozuna, you can make a case 30-year-old Marcell Ozuna would have been a better fit in the lineup than Nelly Cruz. But I did find that interesting. On the Vikings, I'll just say this much. It's something you guys have talked about at length. There are credible NFL people that I know. I texted with one 24 hours ago that truly believe Kirk Cousins is going to end up with the San Francisco 49ers.
Reckless speculation.
Now, me personally, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be the Vikings quarterback here in 2021. But I'm just telling you, this isn't made up fodder. Like there are legitimate league people talking about this possibility. I'll also say this much. Anything you talk about in terms of, you know, could the Vikings land Deshaun Watson? I'm just telling you this right now. With his no trade power, Deshaun Watson would not approve a trade to the Minnesota Vikings.
No, with Justin Jefferson here, I mean, okay, if he could pick his coach, then maybe. Hey, Deshaun, Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, right now though, as currently constructed with the offense that they have chosen to run, I'm just telling you.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Deshaun Watson would not approve a trade to Minnesota.
I mean, think about this. If you're the Timberwolves, and let's say, all right, you got a chance to get, and I don't know, pick a player. You got a chance to get Steph Curry 3 years ago or something, but he's gonna want a slightly different offensive system and a new coach. I think you say, all right, well, Mike, it's been great, nice little 7-year run for you, but Eric Bieniemy's done working for the year for Kansas City here in about 3 days. So
that's a lot of money, though. Zim is making north of $7.5–8 million. Are you really eating all that money, then giving up all the draft capital, potentially player capital? The word is from credible Houston reporters that the Texans are looking for a really good defensive player, if not multiple really good defensive players in any Watson trade. Are you really going to go down that path? I think the whole Watson talk is super unlikely. Him accepting a trade here and the Vikings heavily pursuing a Watson trade. I think if they end up trading Cousins, Garoppolo is probably this team's quarterback this year, and maybe they end up trying to move up in the draft for somebody.
Do not rain on our reckless speculation, Darren.
Judd, it's not reckless though. It's really it's not.
Hey, I got one.
People
for you
are talking
to chase.
about it. Yeah.
Hey, wait. I've got one, and I've not told Dex or Phil this, but I've got a possible scoop on air that I'm going to drop on you for you to check on. I heard through a secondary source, so it's not that before the Matthew Stafford trade was made, that let's just say the Los Angeles area code showed up in Eagan at the TCO Performance Center, and the availability of Kirk Cousins was asked about.
What?
That Sean McVay had them make
reckless speculation.
Now, I need you to check on that. I don't know the validity exactly, but I'm telling you, a lot's going on behind the scenes.
Well, I think there is a lot going on behind the scenes. Now, full disclosure, you actually texted me that note in the last day or two and asked me to check on it.
Yeah.
And I've tried, and I haven't gotten anywhere. It doesn't mean it's not true, but I have not been able to confirm that the Rams did that. But like Sam Farmer, who's a great reporter for the LA Times, he reported, I trust him. He's been doing this a really long time, has impeccable sources. He reported that they reached out to the Packers inquiring about Aaron Rodgers. So I wouldn't be shocked if they at least made a phone call. That would not surprise me at all.
I need a cigarette after this segment. This is great.
Oh, but the Packers denied it, so it must not be true.
Yeah.
Reckless speculation.
Journalism 101. Why is this person lying to me? One other note. I had a nice conversation yesterday with former Bison, North Dakota State Bison offensive lineman. He went to Becker High School, Dylan Raduns. I hope I'm saying his last name correctly, but he has a chance to go, like, I don't know, maybe as high as late first round, maybe second round. Like, he's not getting past the second round, though. He can play. He played left tackle at North Dakota State, but he's got enough position flexibility where he can play guard. He had an unbelievable Senior Bowl week. He said he's thought about it. Now, I let him in with a question, but he certainly has thought about the possibility of playing for the hometown Vikings. He thinks the zone blocking scheme fits his skill set perfectly. He did interview with the Vikings down in Mobile, but they ended up, every player down there ended up talking to every team. They ended up via plexiglass. So it was face-to-face, but there was plexiglass separating. Every guy down there interviewed with every team. So it's not out of the ordinary that Dylan interviewed with the Vikings. But really impressive kid. I really, really enjoyed my conversation with him yesterday. Hopefully I'll get that on my next Scoop podcast as well. Also, a Minneapolis South kid, Minneapolis South High School alum, Ellerson Smith, went to Northern Iowa, Sackmaster. He had a really good week in Mobile. So we've got a couple Minnesota kids, Dylan Raduns and Ellerson Smith, that have a chance to certainly get drafted. In Dylan's case, pretty high. And then, the combine invitations went out. The combine is not going to be the traditional combine we know, but Raduns is in for the combine. Rashad Bateman, no surprise, is in for the combine. Ben St. Juste, former Gophers cornerback, is in for the combine.
Nice. That's inside information about your favorite local sports teams. Darren Doogie Wolfson from 5 Eyewitness News and the Scoop Podcast, Apple, Spotify, SKORNorth.com, and the SKOR North app. We'll see you next week, Doogie.
One more note. Paige Beckers, former Hopkins High School star. Yes, my bias, because that's my home district. But she had a career-high 32 points last night for UConn. They destroyed St. John's. Privately, I know people that Gino Auriemma, the legendary UConn coach, I know people that Gino has told that he believes Paige Beckers will be every bit as good as Diana Taurasi. And Diana Taurasi, any way you want to spin it, is one of the 5 best female basketball players of all time. That's how high the ceiling Gino believes is for Paige Beckers.
Amazing. That's Doogie. We'll talk to him again next Thursday. And coming up next, the Reckless Speculation Thursday train rolls on with our friend Greeny, Mike Greenberg from Get Up and ESPN Radio.
Reckless speculation.